Before we get into the bad stuff, I just want to say this right quickly. Brandon Fraser, an amazing actor. The other actors, eh. And also, keeping the entire movie in the apartment, beautiful artistic stuff. But now we're going to go ahead and get into what I have a problem with. First of all, it wasn't very good as far as setting up on the other things. It was so cliche, I just expected more. Angry teenage daughter, the whole ex-wife thing, being gay and religion, telling you can't be gay. It just didn't really push it. It just felt like it was just a boring story. Like everybody was just fitting into a box. Check. Gay person? Check. Religion? Check. Angry teenager? Check. Ex-wife? Check. It just wasn't very good that way. But let's talk about Charlie. Bunch of spoilers here. This is what it was just disgusting how it went about it. First of all, Charlie did the exact same thing Alan did. Alan being the ex-boyfriend who ended up taking his life because of religion. What ended up happening is Alan ended up starving himself and eventually jumping off a bridge. It's so crazy because after watching Liz, who is Charlie's best friend and Alan's sister, Charlie, after watching Alan and watching Liz have to lose her brother, Charlie does the exact same thing. Alan starved himself, and then Charlie ate himself to death, and Liz had to deal with it. He looks Liz in her eyes and tell her he is just not going to go to the hospital. I just don't understand what story they're always trying to push here. He refuses treatment despite being able to afford to go to the hospital because they want to paint this narrative that, because he's saving up all this money for his daughter, that justifies it all. It is insane to ever think that way, that a daughter wouldn't want her father in her life. She'd rather have the money because her father ate himself to death. You think that's the story that we should go with? This is a complete story about an addict, not about a man who's obese, who's trying to put it together. This is an addict who is slowly dying and doesn't give an F about anybody around him. Not the ex-wife who is crying in his shoulders as he's dying. Not his best friend who is watching him die the same way. Not his daughter who's at the very end, we'll get to the end of the movie, but is saying, "Daddy, please," crying tears, still eats himself to death. He leaves his daughter to have an affair with a man, right? He leaves his whole family, burns down the whole marriage to go have a relationship with the man because he found himself. Despicable. Not because he wanted to have a relationship with the man, but the fact was he didn't even give his family a chance to even cope with it. He just left. He left married and came back with the lover and then burned his family to the ground. And we're supposed to be happy for this man? Absolutely not. And then once again, he tries to rekindle his relationship with his daughter, who is falling apart because she didn't have her father in her life, and her mother drinks herself to death, pretty much. And this is what he repays her with, let her see him die. And that was the plan. So he abandons her not once, but twice, and tries to use it as, but I was just trying to save myself. Nah, that ain't how it goes. In this same stupid trope we see in every movie, I hate it. We're going to get deep into the addiction thing, and this is why I hate it, but it is this false reality that an entire relationship could be mended in 5 days just because he was dying. He thought that his whole relationship with his daughter is going to be great because he cries to her at one point in the movie and is like, "You're amazing. You're perfect, Allie." No. You think she's going to be less traumatized? She was traumatized going in watching her father have an affair and leave the family. She's traumatized by her mother drinking. And then in the end, what did she get? To watch her father die. And the movie is implying that he dies in the end. She gets to watch her father die in front of her eyes. A 600-pound man, and you know how people die. They don't just die. He's going to, heart's going to be pumping. It's going to be a disgusting mess. He's going to soil himself. That's what she gets. And he's like, yes, I did a good thing. I let my daughter read this essay that she made in the 8th grade and told her she's amazing. Now she gets to watch me die, probably bloodied and just soiling myself, just filling the room with stink in my dead body. Yes, that'll do it. But let's get to the true point of the matter. If this was somebody who was struggling with anorexia, would this movie be upheld like it was? If it wasn't called The Well and it was called Bones, would this movie be that great? If this movie wasn't called The Well, it was called Needle in a Haystack, and it was about somebody who was a drug addict, would this be upheld the same way? Just replace a fat man and an obese guy who eats his feelings just like an addiction person does, knowing he's dying. Just imagine it's somebody who's just sticking a needle in their arm. Will we have the same thing? Will we applaud them at the end for being like, yes, he did a great job because he gave his daughter some money as she watched him overdose? It's the same thing. If you saw somebody getting up and standing and their bones are rattling because they're so skinny, and then they just fall into a heap, would that be amazing? You can cut the scene however you want to, but if this is one thing that's always so frustrating when it comes to obesity, and I'm talking from a man who's obese, but I know. I always treat it like it's a bad addiction. I never talk to people like, oh, this is just a funny thing to have. No, I am working hard, and I continue to do it, but it is a fight every day to get away from the poison, you know? But I always take it very seriously, and it always sucks to hear. It's like if I was an alcoholic and I was struggling to get away from alcohol and I just couldn't do it. It would suck to watch a movie, glorify it as if like we know it's bad, but you end the movie like, but what does it matter? At the end of the day, you mended your relationship with your daughter and then you threw up and choked on your own vomit. Nobody would want that. So it's always frustrating when you see an obese man get treated like it's not a real addiction, like, he's just fat. Yes, he eats his emotions. Yes, he's having a heart attack and all these bad things are happening, but he's obese, so let's not treat it like it's anorexia, or let's not treat it like it's a real drug or anything. Like, no, treat it just as bad. Demonize it just as bad. It's not a good thing. This man literally just killed himself in front of his daughter, his wife, and his friend. Let's not forget that. So my heart-filled message, if I could say anything, don't let yourself go this route when it comes to addiction. Just keep pushing yourself to the edge and just waiting for yourself to die. This was a movie about suicide. Okay? This was a suicide movie. There's no way around that. It was based off of somebody wanting to take their life. This man had nothing to live for. The only thing different between him and what we see in other things, no, he didn't pull out a revolver. Okay? No, he didn't go sit in the bathtub and do what the girl did in 13 Reasons Why. No, he didn't do that. He killed himself with food. He was in a suicide mission. From the second the movie started, when he said that, when Liz told him he was dying, he said he was okay with it. He was on a suicide mission. And then he wants to give off his lessons to all his students. That part's not that important. But all his students saying life doesn't matter, you need to be honest with yourself. You were not honest with yourself. Brendan Fraser, you making this movie didn't help nobody really. This didn't help him become honest with himself. If you want to make a movie like this, fine. But you need to warn people. This movie is about suicide. Let's not bullshit, okay? Sorry for my language, but this movie was about suicide. And you should have warned people who were watching it. I don't remember seeing any kind of thing. And when I watched the end of the movie, I didn't see no subtitle say, hey, make sure to get help if you're having suicidal thoughts. This man was clearly struggling with suicidal thoughts, and he wanted to die. And this movie did not at any point address that. That's the most disgusting thing about this movie, is that it never addressed a man who was ready to commit suicide. And then the whole story is preferenced around Alan, who did kill himself jumping off a bridge. No. Instead of really saying therapy and getting help for all these people, they just wanted to push this agenda for Alan, and I can understand being a man who struggles with homosexual thoughts and you feel like the world is against you. We've seen it happen with many people, okay? Address it. Nobody is saying that you can't be these things, but the movie didn't even allow you to even think. And because Alan died the way he did, they just let Charlie off the hook by saying, it's the gay fat man, so we're not going to care about his suicide. You should. What does it matter what he is? The point is, he wanted to die, but they just watered it down in this whole religious thing, and it always skips the point for people who are really struggling with it. And I hate that this movie screwed that up. This was a person who was dealing with an addiction and probably dealing with who he was. He said himself that he probably thought that people thought he was disgusting because he was obese or because he was gay. That's not a man who's dealing with who he is. That's not a man who's coming to know who he is. That's not a man accepting of who he is. This man at no point did that. In this movie is a bad representation of how to deal with your thoughts. You do not just kill yourself like Charlie did. Alan's story is different because Alan, in a split second, decided to go away. Charlie knew he was going to die, knew he could get help, and decided not to. And so I think this movie was horrible. And yes, Brandon did a great job acting. He did a horrible job selling this movie and what it really could have been. This movie, in my opinion, is trash. You can disagree with me, but it was romanticized. It was romanticized suicide. Garbage. Hated the whole thing. Never watch again because it's just a movie that's supposed to make you cry, and then it ends with suicide. It's bullshit. But I'm not going to keep going. That's it.